My name is Jessica. I'm 38 years old, and for the past 9 years, I've worked as the senior account manager for Halverson Dynamics, a mid-sized engineering firm that survived on precision, timing, and client trust. I wasn't the loudest in the boardroom or the flashiest at networking events, but I built client relationships that held this company together through 2 market crashes and a pandemic. That morning started like any other. I was reviewing final details for a critical contract, a multi-year supply deal with Hensley Aerospace worth over $12 million. I'd spent 7 months on it. Countless late nights, international calls, emergency weekend meetings. The usual grind. But this deal? This would secure not just my team's future, but the entire company's stability for years. At 9:15 a.m., I walked into the conference room, laptop in hand, documents printed and signed by both legal teams, ready for the final client review. The room was full, the Hensley executives, their legal counsel, and our internal leadership. And then, there was him. Ethan Caldwell, our new CEO, 33. Harvard MBA, consultant turned executive with a LinkedIn profile packed with buzzwords like disruption and agile mindset. He'd been with us exactly 6 weeks. He didn't greet me when I walked in, just gave me that corporate shark smile as I took my seat at the end of the table. I opened my presentation folder. That's when it happened. Ethan stood up, smoothed his designer suit, and looked directly at me. "Jessica, I appreciate your years of service," he said, voice calm, almost friendly. "But effective immediately, your position is terminated." The room froze. I blinked once. My hand stayed on the folder. I felt every pair of eyes shift from him to me. The Hensley COO, a woman I'd flown to Tokyo with last spring, stared at Ethan like he'd just grown horns. I adjusted the stack of documents in front of me. "I hope tomorrow's contract signing goes as planned." Ethan gave a short, dry laugh. "What contract?" He smirked, glancing at the Hensley team like this was some inside joke. I met his eyes. "Guess you'll find out." The silence hit hard. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Ethan waved a hand. "Thank you for your time, Jessica. HR will be in touch." I gathered my things, carefully, methodically. No drama, no scene. But inside, I felt something sharp twist in my chest. Not humiliation, not fear. Something colder. I walked out of the room without looking back. At 11:45 a.m., I sat alone at Millstone Cafe, 2 blocks from the office. My phone buzzed twice with calls from HR. I let them go to voicemail. I stirred my coffee and stared at the client binder in my bag. The binder Ethan hadn't even realized existed. Because here's the thing about business. Relationships don't live in databases. They live in people. Ethan didn't know that I'd personally negotiated Hensley's engineering requirements down to the microspecs. He didn't know their COO hated direct negotiations with CEOs and preferred trusted relationship managers. Me. He didn't know I'd resolved their supplier crisis last quarter at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, but he was about to find out. At 2 p.m., I called Helen, my mentor and former director before she retired last year. I hadn't spoken to her since her retirement party. "Jess?" she answered, surprised. "Everything okay?" Ethan fired me. A pause, then a slow exhale. "He fired you? Before the Hensley signing?" "Right in front of them." Another pause. "He's a dead man walking." I smiled for the first time that day. "Thought you'd say that." "You have the relationships. You hold the keys. They'll walk with you." I sipped my coffee. "We'll see." At 5:30 p.m., I sat at my kitchen table watching the sun dip behind the skyline. My phone vibrated with a text from Sophie, the Hensley account lead. "Is it true? You're no longer with Halverson?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, "It's true." Her reply came instantly. "We need to talk. Urgently." I leaned back in my chair, heartbeat steady. Ethan thought I was a name on a payroll sheet. Tomorrow morning, he'd learn I was the reason the deal existed. And I hadn't even started yet. At 7:30 a.m. the next morning, I sat at my usual corner table in Brew and Company, the coffee shop across the street from Halverson's headquarters. My laptop was open, but I wasn't working. Not yet. I was waiting. At exactly 8:05 a.m., my phone buzzed. Sophie. Jessica, we're pulling the signing. We won't move forward without you. I read the message twice. Not angry. Not confused. Calm. I replied with a single word. Understood. I leaned back, watching the office windows across the street. Halverson's logo gleamed on the glass. Sleek, modern, impressive. A perfect symbol of everything Ethan Caldwell wanted people to believe about the company. But inside those walls, cracks were forming. At 8:42 a.m., my former assistant, Carla, texted me. Ethan's storming around the office. Hensley just called. They said they won't sign until they speak with you directly. He's freaking out. I took a slow sip of my coffee. I could almost hear Ethan's clipped, impatient voice. The man had been in charge for 6 weeks and thought power came from barking orders. The real power? That came from trust. At 9:15 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Jessica. Ethan Caldwell. His voice sounded tight, clipped. There's been a misunderstanding. I almost smiled. Misunderstanding? I'm sure you've heard. There's been some confusion with Hensley. Obviously, we want to resolve this quickly. Obviously. We need you to come in. Today. I set down my coffee slowly. I don't work for Halverson anymore. You made that pretty clear yesterday. He gave a soft laugh, forced. Let's not make this personal. The company needs you on this account. Does it? I asked quietly. Or do you? A pause. He lowered his voice. Jessica, I'm authorized to offer you a consultancy fee. Double your previous salary. Sign the contract. Deliver the presentation. We close the deal together. Clean slate. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, I'm meeting with Hensley at 10. I could almost hear his sharp intake of breath. Where? Somewhere you won't be. I hung up. At 9:58 a.m., Sophie arrived at the cafe. Her expression told me everything before she even spoke. He actually fired you? She asked, sitting across from me. Yesterday, right before the final review. She shook her head, folding her arms. Does he have any idea how much prep this deal required? The custom compliance checks alone took 3 months. I nodded. He thinks relationships are optional. Her eyes hardened. They're not. Hensley isn't signing with Halverson. I studied her face. Are you sure? We don't work with companies that treat their people like numbers. She leaned in slightly. But we might work with people we trust, wherever they go. That was the moment it shifted. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. At 11:30 a.m., Carla sent another text. Ethan called an emergency board meeting. He's telling them you sabotaged the deal. I stared at the message, letting it sink in. Sabotaged? Typical. When things fall apart, some people blame the storm. Others blame the weather report. I replied, tell him I wish him luck. At 1 p.m., Helen called. You met with Hensley? Yes. And? They're open to a new partnership. Independent consultancy. They said they'd move their business, if I'm leading it. Helen gave a low whistle. So, what's your move? I looked out the window at Halverson's building. I'm not making one. They are. At 3:15 p.m., my LinkedIn inbox lit up. 3 messages, all from former clients, all asking the same thing. Heard what happened. Where are you headed next? Thinking of moving our business. Would love to work with you directly. Please tell me you're consulting. We need someone like you. By 4 p.m., I'd made my decision. I wasn't going back. I wasn't taking revenge. I was moving forward. And I was taking everything Ethan thought he owned, trust, loyalty, and business, with me. At 5:30 p.m., as the office lights flickered off across the street, my phone buzzed again. Ethan. This time, I didn't even bother to answer. I opened a blank email draft, typed in Hensley's CEO, and hit send, looking forward to working together. My consultancy officially launches Monday morning. By Monday morning, word had already spread. I arrived at the office space I'd rented downtown, a modest suite inside a shared workspace hub, nothing fancy. A desk, a chair, good Wi-Fi, and a clean view of the skyline. That's all I needed. At exactly 8:05 a.m., I sent out my first official announcement. Jessica Moore, independent client relations consultant, specializing in aerospace and engineering partnerships, now accepting client inquiries. I included my direct contact. No bold claims, no glossy branding, just a quiet message of availability. By 8:30 a.m., I had 5 responses. By 9 a.m., I had 12. One of them was from Lindell Defense, a firm I hadn't worked with in 2 years. We've heard what happened at Halverson. Are you available for a project next quarter? This wasn't personal anymore. It was business. The business Ethan believed he could lead with charm and corporate slogans. At 9:15 a.m., Carla called. She never called. Jessica, you won't believe this. Try me. The board's in chaos. The Hensley contract collapsed over the weekend. They're blaming Ethan. Well, some of them are. The others think you engineered the whole thing. I kept my voice even. Engineered? By what? Leaving quietly? She exhaled hard. He told them you refused to hand over proprietary client data, that you locked him out of the systems. I nearly laughed. I left everything on the shared drive, Carla. You know that. I know, but they don't. I leaned forward in my chair. What's the mood inside? Panic. A pause. Jessica, I'm thinking of leaving. I closed my eyes for a moment. Carla had been my assistant for 6 years. Loyal, sharp. The kind of person who never asked for credit but kept every project running. You know where to find me, I said quietly. By noon, the story hit the industry grapevine. Halverson Dynamics had lost Hensley Aerospace, the biggest aerospace account in their portfolio. The whispers started. Leadership mismanagement. Failure to retain key talent. Breakdown in client trust. I didn't spread those rumors. I didn't have to. At 1:30 p.m., Helen called. You ready for the next step? I smiled. What do you mean? Jessica, you've got leverage. You've got clients. You've got momentum. Time to decide, do you want a freelance? Or do you want to build something bigger? I let the question hang. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I was thinking, maybe small-scale consultancy? Helen laughed. You're thinking too small. I stared out the window at the Kansas City skyline. Maybe she was right. At 3 p.m., Carla texted again. Ethan held an emergency all-hands meeting. He blamed the loss on client volatility. Said you'd been planning your exit for months, I replied. What did the team say? Her answer came instantly. Nothing. No one believed him. That said it all. At 4:45 p.m., I got a LinkedIn connection request. Ethan Caldwell. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it without a second thought. 2 minutes later, a message came from Marcus Trent, CEO of Lindell Defense. Coffee tomorrow? Interested in your take on relationship-driven client management. We're reviewing all contracts next quarter. Could be an opportunity. Helen's words echoed in my head. Bigger. At 5:30 p.m., I got a text from Sophie. We're officially ending talks with Halverson. The board signed off today. I texted back, I'm sorry it came to this. Her reply was instant. We're not. Some companies forget that trust isn't a contract clause. We don't. By 7 p.m., I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker on. Halverson thought I was expendable. Ethan thought I was replaceable. They were both wrong. I wasn't taking revenge. I wasn't plotting some grand downfall. I was simply doing what I'd always done, building trust, honoring relationships, keeping my word. And now, the world was moving toward me. By Tuesday morning, my calendar was fully booked. At 8 a.m., I met with Marcus Trent from Lindell Defense at a small cafe near Union Station. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I've been in this business 30 years, he said, stirring his espresso. "And I've learned one thing. You don't mess with client trust. Halverson forgot that." I nodded, letting him talk. "We've got 2 major supplier contracts coming up for review. I want you consulting on both." I raised an eyebrow. "You know I'm a one-person operation right now." "For now," Marcus said with a knowing smile. "That'll change." He wasn't wrong. By 10:30 a.m., I'd signed my first independent consulting agreement with Lindell, a 6-month contract with options for renewal. At noon, Carla called again. Her voice sounded sharper this time. "Jessica, you're not going to believe this. Try me. Ethan's been called into an emergency board session. Closed doors. Word is, they're questioning his leadership." I leaned back in my chair. "After one lost contract?" Carla hesitated. "Number." After 4, I sat up straighter. "4? Since Friday, 3 other clients have either pulled contracts or postponed negotiations. One of them specifically asked for you. Ethan couldn't answer their questions or explain why you were gone." I exhaled slowly. "What about the team?" "They're scared. People are dusting off resumes. Some are reaching out, asking if you're hiring." I smiled slightly. "Tell them I'm listening." By 3 p.m., LinkedIn notifications were pouring in. "Heard you started your own consultancy. Would love to connect. We've been considering moving our business. Let's talk? Can you advise on an upcoming contract negotiation?" I wasn't chasing anyone. They were coming to me. At 5 p.m., I got a call from Helen. "You've seen the news?" she asked. "What news?" She chuckled. "Check your inbox." I opened my email and found a forwarded article from a business journal. "Halverson Dynamics faces client exodus amid leadership shakeup." The headline hit like a gong. I skimmed the article. Anonymous sources, loss of key accounts, leadership questioned. The article didn't mention me by name, but it didn't have to. The subtext was clear. Halverson's leadership gambled on arrogance and lost. At 7:30 p.m., Sophie called. "Jess, I've got another offer for you." I smiled. "This your way of telling me Hensley wants me full-time?" She laughed softly. "Not exactly. We want you on retainer, exclusive consultant for our aerospace division. Flexible terms. You set your hours." I hesitated. "That's a big commitment." Sophie's voice softened. "We trust you. And honestly, we don't trust anyone else right now." I thought of Ethan, of the look he must have worn when that boardroom door closed behind him. "I'll draft a proposal in the morning," I said. At 9 p.m., Carla texted again. Ethan tried to call Hensley directly. They refused to take his call. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. "Some lessons are learned the hard way." By midnight, I was sitting on my balcony again, city lights flickering below, contract drafts open on my laptop. I wasn't a rogue employee. I wasn't a disgruntled manager. I was a businesswoman building something new. Ethan had believed relationships were replaceable, that people were expendable. But trust? Trust isn't something you can fire. It follows you. Or it leaves with you. And Halverson was just beginning to learn how costly losing it could be. Wednesday morning started with a text from Carla. "Ethan's out. Board voted him out this morning. Interim CEO announced Martin from finance." I read it twice. Then again. I didn't know whether to be surprised or vindicated. Ethan Caldwell, the man who fired me in front of clients with a smug grin, was now just another cautionary tale in a boardroom drama no one would remember kindly. But I wasn't celebrating. Because for me, this wasn't about Ethan anymore. It hadn't been for days. This was about something bigger, a choice I hadn't realized I'd been making all along. At 10 a.m., I met with Sophie and Marcus in a private meeting room downtown. "Here's what we're proposing," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the table. "A joint consulting partnership. You lead. We back you financially. We bring in top-tier talent, my handpicked by you." I opened the folder. It wasn't a casual offer. Equity stake, performance bonuses, full control over operations. "You want me to build a firm," I said, scanning the terms. "We want you to build the firm," Sophie corrected. "The one companies like ours actually trust." For a long moment, I just stared at the document. It felt surreal. 1 week ago, I'd been an employee in a system I thought I couldn't change. Now, I was staring at the blueprint of a company with my name on it. And not because I'd chased revenge, but because I'd chosen to walk forward when everyone else scrambled to fix their mistakes. At noon, Carla called again. "You were right," she said quietly. "About what?" "Ethan. The way he treated people. The way he ran the company." Her voice broke a little. "I should have left sooner." I leaned back in my chair. "You stayed loyal to your team. That says more than you know. I put in my notice this morning, and I'd like to work with you if you'll have me." I didn't even hesitate. "I'd be lucky to have you, Carla." By 3 p.m., I'd signed the partnership agreement with Marcus and Sophie. By 4 p.m., I had my first 2 employees lined up. Carla for operations and a compliance specialist I'd worked with on a past project. At 5:30 p.m., Helen texted, "You're doing it. Proud of you." I smiled at the screen. Meanwhile, inside Halverson, the cracks were splitting wide open. Carla sent me updates throughout the afternoon. Half the account management team submitted resignation letters today. Clients are pulling contracts faster than the board can respond. Martin's trying to stabilize the company, but the damage is deep. It wasn't just the loss of contracts. It was the collapse of trust. The board had gambled on Ethan's promise of disruption. They underestimated the cost of losing people who actually knew how to build relationships. At 7 p.m., Marcus called. "Jessica, just heard from a mutual contact. Halverson's trying to reach out to clients you worked with, offering huge discounts to keep their business." I shook my head. Desperate move. Marcus chuckled. "It's backfiring. Clients don't want discounts. They want people they trust. People like you." I let out a slow breath. "We'll take care of them." "No doubt," Marcus said. By 10 p.m., I sat on my balcony with Carla and Helen. We raised our glasses, not to celebrate Ethan's fall, but to mark a new beginning. "You didn't bring them down," Helen said softly. "They did that themselves." I nodded. "I just stepped out of the way." Carla smiled. "And now?" "Now," I said, looking out at the city skyline, "we build something worth trusting." I hadn't chased revenge. I hadn't fought for a title or a paycheck. I'd simply refused to be treated as disposable. And the industry noticed. Because real leadership isn't about power. It's about people. And that's something no arrogant boss can ever buy, steal, or fire. 2 weeks later, I walked into the downtown office suite that now bore a new name on the door, Moore and Partners Consulting. It wasn't just a name. It was a statement. This wasn't a business built on corporate slogans or shallow promises. It was built on relationships, the kind that don't crumble at the first sign of pressure. Inside, Carla was setting up the conference room. Our new compliance director was reviewing a client brief, and Helen, now officially a senior advisor, stood at the window overlooking the city. "Not bad for 2 weeks," Helen said, smiling. I smiled back. "Not bad at all." We'd signed 3 clients in 10 days, companies I'd once managed under Halverson's name. They followed me because they trusted me, not a logo. And they weren't alone. That afternoon, I met with Sophie at a nearby bistro. "Just signed the final paperwork," she said, sliding an envelope across the table. Hensley's partnership with Moore and Partners is official. Retainer plus bonuses for every contract we secure together. I glanced over the terms, though I'd already read them twice. This isn't just business for us, Sophie said quietly. You showed us what loyalty looks like when everything's on the line. I nodded. I intend to keep showing you. She smiled. I don't doubt it. The next morning, my inbox lit up with something unexpected. A message from Martin, Halverson's interim CEO. Jessica, I know things ended badly with Ethan. Halverson would like to explore a consulting partnership with Moore and Partners. Open to a conversation? I stared at the email for a long time. It wasn't lost on me how quickly things change when the power dynamic shifts. But I didn't reply right away. At noon, I sat with Helen and Carla in our office lounge. Martin reached out, I said, sliding my laptop around for them to see. Carla raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. They want you to fix the mess Ethan made? Something like that. Helen leaned back in her chair. What do you want to do? I thought about it. About the countless hours I'd poured into Halverson. About the people they'd let go. The clients they'd lost, and the arrogance they'd defended until it was too late. Finally, I said, I'm not here to fix what they broke. I'm here to build something better. Carla smiled. That sounds like a no. I nodded. That sounds exactly like a no. By Friday, the industry buzz grew louder. Articles floated around about Halverson's leadership shakeup, client losses, and layoffs. No one said it directly, but everyone knew. And in quiet corners of the business world, people started using a phrase I hadn't expected. The Halverson mistake. Not because I destroyed them, but because they destroyed themselves by undervaluing the very people who held them together. That weekend, Helen pulled me aside at a small team gathering. You could have burned them down, Jessica, she said. Some people would have, but you didn't. I shrugged. Didn't need to. She nodded. That's why you're winning. I thought about that. And she was right. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't payback. It's moving forward without bitterness. It's proving by your success that you were never the problem. They were. On Monday morning, I finally replied to Martin's email. Thank you for reaching out. At this time, Moore and Partners is focusing on forward-facing client relationships. We wish Halverson Dynamics the best in rebuilding their trust with the industry. I hit send and closed the laptop. No drama, no bitterness, just done. By the end of the month, we'd secured 2 more clients and hired 3 more team members. Moore and Partners wasn't just surviving. We were thriving. Because when people trust you, they follow you. When you respect them, they fight for you. And when you lead with integrity, you never have to look back. Ethan vanished from the industry within a month. Halverson limped on under new leadership. But me? I built something I believed in. And more importantly, something others believed in too. That was the difference. And that's something no arrogant boss, no short-sighted board, and no reckless CEO can ever take away. Because in business, just like in life, the best kind of revenge is never needing any at all.